Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paul Brown Show. This evening, my guest will be Miss Amy Rice. She's the founder of Graice Supportive Housing. How you doing there, Ms. Rice?
I'm doing fine, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. Tell us a little bit about Graice Supportive Housing.
Well, Paul, Graice Supportive Housing is a nonprofit organization. We provide transitional housing and support services to women who are victims of domestic violence and their dependent children. We just became established here in Charlotte, North Carolina, in 2012. Previously, we were actually formed in Las Vegas, Nevada. The whole purpose of our program is to provide stability, hope, and the opportunity for change and growth for women who had previously been abused.
What, in your definition, would be the definition of domestic violence?
Well, Paul, in my definition of domestic violence is about control. It's about one individual attempting or succeeding in taking control over another individual's life. It's interesting that you ask that question. Oftentimes when an individual is involved in a domestic violence relationship, the control is gradual. The violence is gradual. It may begin with verbal abuse, eventually escalate to mental abuse, and then ultimately become physical abuse, and possibly life-threatening.
What made you decide to want to start a program that dealt with domestic violence?
Well, Paul, actually I am a survivor of domestic violence. Several years ago, I had found myself in an abusive relationship. And, you know, it's really funny because I personally didn't think I fit that stereotypical role of what an abused woman would look like. Actually, I had an extensive career in corrections. I had worked as a correctional officer, parole agent, caseworker, and ultimately was a director of a transitional housing program for ex-offenders. So I really never expected that I could become a victim of domestic violence. Basically, after experiencing that situation, I became sick and tired of being sick and tired and decided to leave the relationship. After an extensive healing process, I realized that there's so many women out there experiencing what I experienced, and I just kind of felt obligated to assist those women who are walking through abusive relationships.
And I applaud you for the program that you have for assisting these ladies that are going through domestic violence. What are some red flags, triggers of a potential someone going through domestic violence?
Well, Paul, a lot of red flag indicators. Like I said, it's all about control. So initially the individual may suggest what you wear, suggest who you deal with. Basically, they tend to attempt to isolate you. They keep you from communicating with your friends, your families. You pretty much become dependent upon the abuser. I believe that was some of the early signs of, you know, red light indicators. And it seems like it's a gradual progression until ultimately it could possibly become physical.
When is there a time frame when you should leave when you're involved in a domestic violence relationship? Is there a certain time frame, or, I mean, because sometimes we have individuals who would stay for a long period of time, but when's the best time to leave?
You know, Paul, for each abused individual, they have their own process. There's stages of leaving. In the first stage of leaving, it's initially denial. At this point, the abused denies even being abused. She won't even admit the fact that she's being abused. And she believes that each incident of violence is going to be the last incident. The second stage of leaving is the guilt stage. And this is the stage where the abused individual says, you know what, this is my fault. Maybe I should do this or I should do that. If I only didn't do this, then maybe this abuse wouldn't be occurring. She makes excuses for the abuser. And it's at this stage that she's still very committed to the relationship, and she believes in her heart of hearts that it could work out. And the third stage of leaving, it's the enlightenment stage. And the enlightenment stage is kind of those red light indicators starting to go off where you say, hey, I'm being abused, and it seems to be continuing and it's getting worse. Still wants to stay in the relationship and feels as though still possibility for some change. Finally, the final stage of leaving is the responsibility stage. This is where an abused individual comes out and says, you know what, I'm being abused, this isn't going to stop, I have got to leave this relationship and start a new life. It's real interesting because in the stages of leaving, an individual can go from denial stage to the guilt stage to the enlightenment stage, and then work back to the denial stage. So for each individual, it's their own process.
Okay, we read cases of people going through a domestic violence relationship, but they stay in it for years and years. Why do they stay? I mean, why don't they leave? Why is it so hard for someone to leave that type of relationship?
Well, Paul, as I had mentioned, the relationship is truly about control. As you lose your control over your own life, so goes your self-esteem. The lower and lower your self-esteem goes, you tend to believe that you're incapable of leaving. You become completely codependent upon your abuser. And then, too, there's so many obstacles that women have to face prior to leaving. You have a financial obstacles. These women have to figure out, okay, if I leave, where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? How am I going to provide for my children? There's just so many barriers that oftentimes women find it easier just to stay.
Graice Supportive Housing, what's the process for someone getting into your program?
Well, Paul, they can contact us via telephone, email, and or the website. We are not a domestic violence shelter, and I say that to say that we're not a 24-hour facility. In the event that you're in imminent danger, I urge you to get to safety and call 911. Basically, once you make contact with us, we will do intake over the phone and then schedule a more lengthy intake to ensure that we can serve you properly. In the event that you're not a good candidate for our program, we will make every effort to connect you to the resources in the community that best fit your needs. So basically, the first step is just making that call or reaching out for some help.
What services does your program provide?
Well, Paul, obviously we provide housing, a healing home-like environment, but in addition to just housing, we have educational vocational program, and our educational vocational program is basically put in place to assist these women to become fully independent financially, ultimately. We have a vocational specialist who works in the community with the community colleges, the UNC Charlotte, employers. Basically, we teach these women how to complete resumes, just do a job search in and of itself, apply for positions online, dress for success, prepare them to sit down and actually partake in the interview process. That's the type of things that our vocational educational component consists of. We also have a domestic violence advocacy, counseling, and support groups. In addition to that, we have a mental health and substance abuse specialist who basically will provide counseling and also link our women who have any mental health and or substance abuse issues to additional treatment as well as 12-step programming. We have a extensive life skills piece that addresses so many issues. Off the top of my head, we have a budgeting and finance section which addresses living within your means, learning how to create a budget, how to open a savings account, how to open a checking account, things of that nature. We have a conflict resolution piece which basically assists our women in how to communicate and express themselves effectively. We have what else is there? We have a parenting piece, which allows us to teach our mothers how to best parent their children. We have a health and wellness piece, which we address things like healthy eating, ensuring that our mothers are aware of the importance of getting physicals on a regular basis, ensuring that their children have their immunization shots, their immunizations, also how health and or how physical exercise can be an excellent coping skill, as well as keep them healthy and fit. There are, oh gosh, several other components that I can't think of off the top of my head.
I know you mentioned one of your program services is building on an individual's self-esteem. Why is that so vital in that process of the young lady getting her life together?
The self-esteem portion is probably one of the most important portions. Our women have experienced some pretty traumatic events oftentimes, and after just losing all self-confidence and all self-esteem, they're almost, how would I say, stagnated in fear. So before any growth can occur, we have to rebuild that self-esteem.
I know you suggested in your program that individuals stay for at least a minimum of 6 months. Why is that time frame so vital in the growth of that individual?
Well, Paul, our program, the nuts and bolts of our program is our individual development plan, and also called IDP. And our individual development plan basically is our roadmap to how these women are going to address their issues and become fully independent. It's basically a setting of goals. We sit down with our individual and we measure their assets. We also look at the areas where they need to improve. We set their goals. We monitor their goals. So oftentimes they're needing at least 6 months to get reestablished to ensure that when they do leave our home, they're not forced to go back to their abuser, and they're able to fully be self-supporting and stand on their own 2 feet.
And how long can an individual stay in your program?
An individual can stay in our program up to 2 years. Not too many of our women actually require that long, but there are instances that we have women that stay for approximately 2 years.
Confidentiality. Let's talk about that. Why is that important within your program, not only with the ladies that's enrolled, but also your staff members?
Confidentiality is first and foremost key to our women's safety and security. We're in confidential locations, so it's very important that our sites aren't common knowledge. And then too, just with HIPAA and various laws, so we must ensure that all our women information is kept confidential.
If there's any type of breach of confidentiality within your program, what are the repercussions?
Oh, it would be, you mean as far as employee or?
Both the employee and the individual who are in the program.
Okay. It's highly, highly frowned upon as far as the individuals that are in the program. Oftentimes, if, say, an individual who's in the program may have contacted the abuser, the first thing we're going to do is relocate her to another site. Okay. It jeopardizes herself, it jeopardizes the other women in the program, so we have to keep confidentiality first.
Okay, what are some of the eligibilities and requirements for being part of Graice Supportive Housing?
Well, Paul, our individuals must be at least